Welcome, the anointed ones. If they spent half as much time improving themselves as they spent plotting on you, they'd be enlightened by now. That's the energy behind this message. Because let's be honest, some people turned your existence into a full-time job. They clocked in early, stayed overtime, and never asked for vacation. They watched your life like it was their favorite TV series, only to be devastated when the plot twist didn't go their way. And that's exactly what today's topic is about. The moment their perfectly engineered downfall for you became the biggest embarrassment of their lives. Psychologists say that when a person tries too hard to predict someone else's behavior, they often expose their own intentions instead. That's exactly what happened. They were so obsessed with calculating your steps that they forgot you don't move on command. You move on intuition, timing, and divine alignment. That's why the setup looked flawless on paper. That's why the trap looked airtight from their perspective. But here's the twist no one warned them about. You're no longer living in the same psychological location where they tried to corner you. They built a maze for the old you, fearful you, reactive you, wounded you, and didn't realize that version expired like software from 5 updates ago. You're basically a whole new operating system now, and they're still trying to hack you with Windows 98 energy. And when they finally sprung the trap, expecting you to walk right into it, they found nothing but dust, silence, and their own reflection staring back at them. If anything, the only thing that fell into that trap was their delusion, and maybe a little bit of their pride. You didn't dodge their setup. You outgrew it. And that's what truly stung, because nothing infuriates a schemer more than realizing all their effort, strategy, and late-night whispering sessions were wasted on someone who wasn't even looking in their direction. So let's get into it. The setup was perfect. The trap was flawless. Too bad you weren't in it. Number 1. They designed a trap for the version of you that no longer exists. People often think they know you because they remember who you used to be. They interact with old versions of you the way someone uses an outdated map to navigate a rebuilt city. That's exactly what happened here. They created a trap for a you that doesn't even live inside your skin anymore. Every part of their plan was based on your former vulnerabilities, your past reactions, and the emotional patterns you operated from when you were still wounded, unsure of yourself, or easy to manipulate. They assumed the old triggers still worked. They assumed the old fears still lived. They assumed the old insecurities still answered the door. They didn't realize those doors have been permanently sealed. People underestimate how much a person can change once they decide to outgrow who hurt them. Healing doesn't just soften the heart, it rewires the entire operating system. The thoughts that used to scare you don't even register anymore. The bait that used to pull you in now reads like a warning sign you'd never entertain. You didn't avoid their trap because you were lucky. You avoided it because the version of you they designed it for is gone. It's like they built a cage for a bird, only to realize the bird evolved into something with wings they can't predict or contain. While they were studying your old habits, you were busy evolving into someone they no longer have access to. And that's what makes their whole scheme so ironic. They put in the effort, they built the setup, they calculated every detail, but the only thing they truly mastered was their own misunderstanding of you. Their trap required a person who no longer exists, and by the time they sprung it, they were left confronting the truth. Your growth erased their advantage. The entire blueprint crumbled the moment you stepped into your new self. What they prepared for was your history. What arrived was your evolution. And that's why their perfect trap fell apart without you ever touching it. Number 2, they counted on your impulse, but they never prepared for your discipline. Their entire plan hinged on one thing, that you would react exactly the way they expected. They assumed you would explode, chase, argue, or panic. Every layer of their setup was designed for emotional chaos, for the predictable flares of someone still tethered to old pain. They depended on your impulses, your raw reactions, your unfiltered fire. They thought they had mapped your emotional blueprint down to the last tremor of anger or desperation. What they didn't anticipate was that you had mastered yourself in ways they couldn't even imagine. Discipline isn't just self-control. It's a weapon that works quietly, invisibly, but with devastating precision. You didn't need to react because you had already seen the outcome of giving in to emotion too many times before. You had learned that responding with measured action, timing, and clarity far outweighs the chaos of impulsive behavior. They were waiting for a spectacle, a breakdown, a mistake, something to prove their planning worked. Instead, they got nothing. Your calm didn't just frustrate them. It dismantled the illusion that they ever had power over you. The irony is brutal. They invested hours, days, maybe months, expecting a reaction that would validate all their scheming. They calculated the angles, the triggers, the pressure points, and the bait. They assumed they could predict the human they knew before. But you had upgraded your system. You had become someone who moves with intention instead of instinct. Someone who doesn't hand over control to others. Someone whose patience and foresight make traps irrelevant. Their perfect plan, their flawless setup, relied entirely on one false assumption, that you were still a person who could be provoked. When you refused to take the bait, the whole architecture collapsed. Their masterpiece became meaningless because it only functioned in the presence of weakness, and weakness was no longer an option for you. Your discipline didn't just save you, it exposed the fragility of their obsession. They counted on your impulse, but they never prepared for your mastery. Number 3, you broke the trap by refusing to play the role they assigned you. Every trap has a script. They imagined you stepping into their story, following the cues they wrote for you, hitting every emotional mark they designed. They pictured you acting exactly how they expected, reacting in anger, fear, confusion, or desperation. They thought they were directing a performance, and that you were the actor who would play their role to perfection. They didn't account for one crucial thing. You stopped performing for people who never deserved the front row seat to your life. Refusing to play their role isn't just defiance, it's power. It's the moment you realize that their plot only exists if you engage with it, that their drama depends on your participation. The trap was sophisticated, carefully constructed, and meant to provoke the exact reaction they wanted. Every angle, every setup, every coincidence was meant to push you into a predictable response. But when you refused to follow their cues, the trap failed instantly. It was like handing someone a key to a door you don't even own anymore. By refusing to act the way they wanted, you exposed the fragility of their plan. They had assumed control over you, but control only exists when someone allows it. They treated you like a chess piece, expecting you to move exactly where they could anticipate. Instead, you became the player who ignores the board entirely. Their calculations, their schemes, their late-night plotting, all of it became irrelevant the moment you refused to perform on their stage. This is why their trap didn't just fail. It crumbled spectacularly. Every effort to manipulate, every layer of deception, every ounce of strategy depended on your cooperation. And when you didn't give it, the illusion of their control vanished. You didn't just escape, you rewrote the rules of engagement. Their plan was flawless, but only if you acted like they expected. By refusing, you not only broke the trap, you reminded everyone involved that the most dangerous thing isn't the trap itself. It's the person who refuses to step inside it. Number 4, your absence. Expose the true intentions of everyone involved. When you didn't walk into the trap, something happened that none of them prepared for. The spotlight turned inward. Without you present to blame, provoke, or manipulate, they had no distraction to hide behind. Your absence forced everyone involved to keep moving forward with their plan, and that's where their true intentions slipped out. Loudly, carelessly, and without the mask they normally hold so tightly. You didn't need to confront anyone or expose anything. The moment you refused to participate, they revealed themselves. The truth is, people show their real character when the target isn't participating. When the story isn't being fed by the person it's meant to destroy, the people behind it start scrambling. They get impatient. They get clumsy. They talk too much. They expose details they were supposed to keep hidden. They start pointing fingers, sharing secrets, and turning on each other because the plan depended on your reaction to keep everyone aligned. Without your involvement, the glue holding their alliance together dissolved. Your absence forced them to continue the script alone, and in doing so they accidentally told on themselves. Every whisper, every sudden shift, every panicked move showed exactly who was working with who, what their deeper motives were, and how long they had been plotting. They revealed their envy, their insecurity, their desperation, and their obsession without you ever lifting a hand. You didn't catch them, they caught themselves. This is the part that always shocks people. Silence and distance are more revealing than confrontation. By stepping back, you turned their trap into a confession booth. By not reacting, you made their intentions impossible to hide. Every hidden agenda they tried to bury surfaced the moment they didn't have a version of you to manipulate. Your absence didn't just protect you, it exposed the truth. It forced every player to reveal the part they were trying to disguise. In the end, the trap didn't collapse because it was flawed. It collapsed because it only worked if you were in it. And when you weren't, the whole structure became a mirror showing exactly who they really are. Number 5, their trap only proved how terrified they still are of your potential. The moment someone builds a trap for you, it's already a confession. They see something in you they can't control, can't predict, and can't compete with. People don't invest time, energy, and coordination into someone they secretly believe is beneath them. They only create elaborate setups when they feel threatened. And in this case, their entire trap exposed the truth. They fear what you're becoming more than they fear anything else. Your potential has become a mirror they can't stand to look into. Their actions weren't driven by confidence, they were driven by panic. Panic that you're growing faster than they expected. Panic that you're outgrowing the role they tried to keep you in. Panic that the person they tried to break is now becoming someone they can't calculate or contain. Every detail of their plan reflected a desperate attempt to slow you down, distract you, or sabotage what they sense is coming for you. Elevation, recognition, self-mastery, and a version of life they don't think you should have. The irony is that their attempt to stop your potential only amplified it. A person with no future doesn't attract enemies who strategize. A person with no influence doesn't provoke this level of obsession. People don't try to cage something that doesn't have wings. Their effort alone exposed how much they believe in you, even while pretending they don't. They saw your potential long before you fully stepped into it, and they responded with fear disguised as control. What they fail to realize is that potential doesn't shrink under pressure, it expands. All their planning only sharpened you. All their plotting only revealed how important your journey is. Their fear became evidence of your greatness. Their desperation became proof of your significance. The trap was never really about destroying you. It was about stopping the version of you that they know will outgrow their entire storyline. In the end, their attempt to limit you only highlighted how unstoppable your potential truly is. Their fear spoke louder than their schemes. Their trap wasn't a sign of your weakness. It was the clearest confirmation of your rising power. Number 6, You outsmarted them because you stopped needing validation from dangerous people. The biggest shift in your life wasn't when you got stronger. It was when you stopped needing approval from people who never valued you in the first place. That change alone dismantled their entire strategy. They were counting on you chasing explanations, closure, apologies, or some form of acknowledgement from them. They thought you still needed their acceptance the way you once did. They believed you still cared about being understood by people who only ever misunderstood you intentionally. When you outgrew that desire, you outgrew their control. Dangerous people don't need weapons. They only need access to your self-worth. Their trap wasn't built to capture your body. It was built to capture your need for validation. They baited you with what they thought you still craved: reconciliation, recognition, attention, or the illusion of peace. They built situations designed to pull at old emotional wounds, expecting you to take the bait because you always did before. But the version of you they were planning for had died the moment you stopped seeking their acceptance. When you no longer need validation from someone, their influence disappears. The insults don't cut, the silence doesn't scare, the manipulation doesn't tempt, and the bait looks obvious. That's what happened here. You didn't fall for the trap because you had finally learned that not every hand extended toward you is there to help. Some are there to pull you back into cycles you fought so hard to escape. Your withdrawal of emotional dependence was your greatest strategy. Instead of reacting to their moves, you watched their motives. Instead of running to fix things, you stepped back and let their behavior expose itself. And without your validation-seeking energy feeding the dynamic, their power evaporated. Their trap required your hunger for their approval, and once that disappeared, so did their entire plan. What they saw as you changing was actually you remembering who you were before you tried to earn love from the wrong people. The moment you reclaimed that identity, you outsmarted them without even trying. Number 7, they built a system, not just a trap, and you dodged the whole system. What they planned for you wasn't a single moment or one emotional setup. They built something far bigger, a whole system designed to corner you from multiple angles. Their goal wasn't just to trigger you once. It was to create a chain of reactions that would make you look guilty, unstable, or out of control. They wanted one wrong move from you, so they could justify a series of calculated responses from them. It was a blueprint, not a coincidence, a structure, not a slip-up. They were creating a domino effect where your first reaction would be the push that sent everything tumbling in their favor. But the flaw in their plan was simple. The system only worked if you entered it. You didn't. You sidestepped the entire architecture, which left every piece they built hanging in the air with nothing to support it. You didn't just avoid a trap, you dismantled an agenda. The beauty of it is that you didn't need to confront, argue, expose, or retaliate. You simply refused to participate, and the system collapsed under its own weight. They expected you to walk into the first step so they could activate the rest. Their confidence came from the idea that you were predictable, that you reacted the same way every time, that they could orchestrate the outcome. But your growth ruined their timing. Your awareness ruined their plan. Your emotional maturity ruined their script. Every part of the system depended on your involvement, and when you didn't show up, they had nothing left but their own intentions exposed. You dodged not a trap, but an entire setup designed to chain you into a narrative they crafted behind your back. And the most painful part for them is that you bypassed all of it without even breaking a sweat. You didn't fall into their storyline, so the story fell apart. Their system became a pile of disconnected parts with no meaning, no power, and no effect. In the end, they didn't fail because they were unskilled. They failed because you outgrew the version of yourself their entire system depended on. You dodged everything because you no longer live in the world where their setup could touch you. Number 8, they prepared for your anger, but your precision terrified them more. The entire setup was crafted with one expectation in mind, that you would explode. They were ready for the loud reaction, the emotional outburst, the rushed decision, the dramatic move. They built everything around the version of you who used to react instantly, the you who used to act before thinking, the you who carried unhealed emotions in every conversation. Anger was the reaction they were banking on, because anger is predictable. Anger is easy to record, easy to twist, easy to weaponize. They were prepared for that. They even rehearsed how they would respond to it. What they never prepared for was your precision, your calm, your ability to think clearly without letting their attempts to provoke you sink into your mind. When you didn't explode, they had nothing to use. When you didn't fall apart, their strategy became useless. You responded with a level of restraint and clarity that shocked everyone involved. That's what terrified them. Not your anger, but your composure. They were ready for chaos, not calculation. Precision is dangerous to people who depend on emotional responses. It shows that you're not being driven by wounds anymore, but by wisdom. It proves you're no longer predictable, and that unpredictability disrupts everything they planned. They didn't know how to handle a quiet mind. They didn't know how to counter someone who observes before acting. When you responded with logic instead of emotion, they lost control of the situation. Their plan wasn't built to withstand someone who had healed from the buttons they used to push. Your calm forced them to reveal their true intentions. Your stillness made every one of their moves look exaggerated and suspicious. Your restraint shifted the entire power dynamic before they even noticed it was happening. They wanted you to be loud so they could play innocent. But when you stayed strategic, it made them look like the problem. Their narrative fell apart without your anger feeding it. In the end, your precision didn't just protect you, it exposed them. It made their plan look childish, sloppy, and desperate. You didn't just outsmart them, you made their entire setup collapse under the weight of your maturity. Number 9, they thought isolation would break you, not knowing it was the very thing that built you. One of the oldest tricks in any setup is isolation. They wanted you separated, misunderstood, cut off, or surrounded by people who didn't have your best interest. They believed that if they could make you feel alone, unsupported, or unheard, you would panic and fall right into the emotional trap they designed. Isolation was their weapon because it used to work on you. It used to make you question yourself. It used to make you rely on the very people who were harming you. They thought the same strategy would work again. They never realized that solitude has become your strength, not your weakness. What they didn't understand is that isolation no longer scares you. It's where you rebuilt yourself. It's where you learned to trust your own voice. It's where you developed spiritual intelligence, emotional clarity, and self-reliance. They thought being alone would make you vulnerable, but it made you sharper. They assumed it would weaken you, but it grounded you in ways they couldn't foresee. Isolation was meant to destabilize you, but instead it stabilized you. You learned how to stay calm when no one was cheering for you. You learned how to push forward even when you weren't being supported. You learned how to separate noise from intuition, and that alone shattered their entire setup. Their plan collapsed the moment isolation didn't break you. When they noticed you weren't panicking, weren't reaching out in desperation, weren't bending under pressure, confusion hit them harder than any confrontation could. They began realizing that the weak you they remembered was gone. The new you can stand alone without crumbling. The new you isn't shaken by silence or distance. The new you becomes more dangerous when left alone, because that's when your mind clears, your discernment strengthens, and your next move becomes unstoppable. Isolation was supposed to trap you in your old fears. Instead, it exposed their own. Because nothing scares a schemer more than realizing the person they tried to break in solitude ended up returning stronger, wiser, and impossible to control. Isolation didn't weaken you, it made you untouchable. Number 10, your pain became a silent technology that rewired your entire being. There's a level of suffering that doesn't just leave scars, it changes the internal architecture of a person. What you went through didn't just make you stronger. That's the kind of line people say when they don't understand the magnitude of what almost destroyed you. What actually happened is far more mysterious and rare. Your nervous system, your instincts, your perception, your emotional intelligence, and even the way your spirit reads a room all went through a complete overhaul. You didn't heal in the usual sense. You evolved into a different kind of human being. When someone absorbs pain that deep, the body and mind stop following the normal instructions they once did. You start picking up things earlier. You see motives before actions. You hear tone before words. You spot patterns others overlook. Your intuition becomes louder and more accurate, not because you're special by default, but because pain forced your inner world to adapt at a pace most people would never survive. It's not magic. It's the kind of transformation pressure creates when it's trying to crush someone who refuses to break. That's why people don't understand you anymore. You're operating from a completely different internal system than they are. They're responding to life from the surface level, while you're responding from the core, the place you were pushed into. You don't get excited by the things that excite them. You don't fall for the tricks that fool them. You don't panic in situations where they crumble. Your pain rewired your threshold for fear, disappointment, and loss. What used to destroy you doesn't even shake you now. And the wildest part, that transformation wasn't intentional. You didn't wake up and say, "Let me upgrade myself." Life backed you into a corner so tight that your only options were collapse or metamorphosis, and something in you chose metamorphosis. That is why the version of you standing here today feels almost unrecognizable from the one who entered that storm. Pain didn't just change you, it engineered you. You didn't survive the pressure. You became someone the pressure couldn't touch anymore. Number 11. You developed a kind of emotional X-ray vision that nobody can hide from. There's a point in life where pain stops being something you feel and becomes something you understand. That shift happened to you a long time ago, and it's the reason people get uncomfortable around you without knowing why. You grew a level of emotional awareness that doesn't come from books, therapy, or life experience. It comes from surviving people who tried to break you in ways they'd never admit out loud. The betrayal, the manipulation, the inconsistencies, the sudden shifts in people's behavior, all of it trained your perception until you could sense what others can't see, even when it's right in front of them. You learned early that people lie more with their energy than with their words. They say one thing, but their tone, their body language, their timing, and their intentions say something entirely different. Most people miss these signals because they've never had to pay attention. But you had no choice. Your survival depended on catching the shifts before the damage hit. And now that you're out of that chaos, the skill never turned off. It only got sharper. That's why you don't react the way others expect you to. You don't get swept up in flattery, pressure, authority, or emotional theatrics. You see straight through the performance. You feel when someone's motives are off, even if they're smiling. You pick up tension before conflict even begins. You sense envy before someone acts on it. You catch dishonesty before the lie is fully formed. To people who operate in shadows, this is terrifying. To people who live authentically, this is comforting. To you, it feels natural, like breathing. What makes this ability so powerful is that it's not based on fear anymore. It used to be. You used to scan people because you were trying to stay safe. But now, it's simply who you are. You're not paranoid. You're perceptive. You're not guarded. You're aware. And that awareness is your superpower. You developed a kind of emotional X-ray vision that strips away masks, exposes hidden agendas, and leaves people stunned at how much you just know. It's not intuition anymore. It's mastery. Number 12, your spirit learned to self-heal faster than people could damage you. There's a rare strength that comes from being hurt so many times that your soul had to evolve just to survive it. You reached a point where the pain that once shut you down no longer holds the same power. It still affects you, of course. You're human. But the recovery time? That changed. What used to take you months to process now takes days. What used to break you now only teaches you. What used to leave you shattered now barely slows you down. And that shift is exactly why people from your past are intimidated by who you've become. You didn't just get stronger, you became emotionally regenerative. You learned how to pull yourself out of dark places without waiting for an apology, closure, or validation. You stopped depending on people to make things right. You stopped waiting for someone to fix what they caused. You learned to sit with your emotions, understand them, process them, and release them in ways most people your age haven't mastered. Life forced you to build your own internal repair system, and now it's one of the most powerful things about you. This healing speed isn't because you're cold or disconnected. It's because you finally learned the truth. Pain is information, not identity. Instead of letting heartbreak define you, you let it refine you. Instead of letting disappointment harden you, you let it sharpen you. Every hit taught you something about yourself, your limits, your patterns, your purpose, your values, your boundaries. And now, even when someone hurts you, it doesn't undo you. It just reveals what needs to change next. People who once counted on your breakdowns don't know how to handle this version of you. They were used to the old you, the one who cried for weeks, who questioned everything, who felt guilty for things that weren't your fault. That version died the moment you realized you could get back up by yourself. Now your healing is quick, clean, and powerful. It's not revenge, it's evolution. You became someone who doesn't stay wounded. You rise, recalibrate, and move forward stronger than before. Number 13, your spirit became immune to manipulation because you learned to read people's patterns, not their words. At some point in your journey, life trained you to study the truth underneath people's behavior. You stopped taking what people said at face value because you realized anyone can sound sincere, anyone can act innocent, and anyone can perform kindness long enough to get what they want. Words started meaning less to you because you learned they could be rehearsed, borrowed, copied, or stolen. But patterns, those never lie. Consistency never lies. Habit never lies. A person's history never lies. And that's the shift that built the version of you people can no longer deceive. This awareness didn't come from being wise out of nowhere. It came from being played one too many times. You noticed the way people repeated the same behaviors even after apologizing. You noticed how someone could care today and disappear tomorrow. You noticed how people could say, "I've changed," and still choose the same harmful actions. Your heart used to give too many chances, but eventually your spirit started tracking patterns the way some people track weather, predictable, obvious, and impossible to ignore. Now you can sense the difference between someone who slipped up and someone who is built on manipulation. You can feel when someone's affection is genuine and when it's just a strategy. You've become so familiar with fake kindness that it no longer confuses you. You've studied broken promises long enough to know which ones will repeat. And what really scares people is that you don't need to call them out anymore. You simply adjust your distance, your energy, and your access. This pattern reading ability is why people can't control you now. They can't mislead you, bait you, guilt trip you, or confuse you like before. You can tell when someone wants something from you, when someone envies you, when someone is trying to use you, when someone is hiding a motive. You became emotionally trained in a way that most people never reach in their entire lifetime. Your intuition didn't just sharpen, it graduated. And now anyone who tries to manipulate you ends up exposing themselves without you even lifting a finger. Number 14, the trap failed. Because you were operating from a timeline they cannot access. They built their plan based on the assumption that your life still moved on the same clock as theirs, that your reactions, decisions, and emotions were tied to their timetable. Every move, every calculation, every expectation hinged on a timeline that no longer exists. They assumed you would respond immediately, predictably, and emotionally. What they didn't realize is that you've shifted to a completely different rhythm, one dictated by awareness, intuition, and alignment rather than panic, fear, or pressure. Their perfect setup was designed for someone living in their world, but you're now operating in a dimension they can't enter, a schedule they can't read, a reality they can't manipulate. Your timing has become your armor. While they scrambled to execute their trap according to their agenda, you moved with precision, patience, and foresight. You no longer react to chaos. You anticipate it, adjust around it, and let it run its course without touching you. What used to feel urgent now unfolds according to your inner clock, a timeline aligned with purpose, clarity, and survival. They expected immediacy and impulsiveness, and instead they were met with calculated stillness. Their strategies depended on controlling when and how you acted, but your freedom from their schedule rendered every effort meaningless. By the time they realized you weren't in their timeline, panic and confusion set in. They couldn't manipulate, provoke, or corner you because every action they took assumed you were still bound by their rules. You were already several steps ahead, moving in a space where their influence doesn't reach. The trap didn't just fail. It collapsed spectacularly under the weight of your detachment from their temporal expectations. This is why you didn't merely escape, it was impossible for them to contain you. The version of you they designed the trap for doesn't exist anymore. You live on a schedule they can't touch, a timeline they can't predict. And in that reality, you are untouchable. Their trap was perfect on paper, but in the living world of your evolution, it didn't even register. You transcended the time frame they believed would control you, and that is the ultimate reason their plan imploded before it ever had a chance. The story of the trap, the setup, and the schemers who thought they could control you is not just about a moment. It's about a lifetime of evolution, discipline, and self-mastery. Every effort they made, every strategy they plotted, and every expectation they held was built for a version of you that no longer exists. From the very first moment, they underestimated your growth, your discipline, and the precision with which you move through life. They assumed you would react like you once did, that you would fit into the script they wrote, and that your presence in their narrative would validate their control. But you rewrote the story before they even realized it, moving on a timeline they could never access and responding from a place of mastery and awareness they could never anticipate. What they saw as perfect traps and foolproof plans were only mirrors reflecting their fear, obsession, and lack of understanding. Their designs failed because you operate differently now. You don't need validation, you don't follow the old patterns, and you don't live by the rules they try to impose. Your evolution, your emotional intelligence, and your capacity to navigate the world without reacting to chaos turned their intentions into nothing more than a lesson in futility. Every trap, every manipulation, every expectation collapsed, not because of luck, but because you became someone who no longer lives in the version of reality they assumed you did. You didn't just survive their schemes, you outgrew them. You became immune to manipulation, untouchable in your timing, and untethered from their expectations. You are a person operating from a higher plane of awareness, strength and self-discipline that they can't even comprehend. Their obsession, their fear, and their intricate designs all exist to highlight your growth, your power, and the fact that no one can script your life but you. If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that sharpen your awareness. Like this video to support the journey. Comment below with your thoughts and experiences so we can grow together, and share it with someone who needs to understand the truth about power, growth, and outgrowing traps. Stay aware, stay untouchable, and remember, you are operating on a timeline they can never reach. God bless you.